Hello, and welcome back to Pilot Reviews. You see what I did there? I took all of your wonderful suggestions from the last episode. I figured I'm probably just going to do pilots for these shows that I'm talking about. I don't think I'm going to do like a whole series or anything like that unless I got something crazy like, I don't know, like 15 likes on a whole video. Then I would probably do like a part 2 because, you know, guys would be frothing at the mouth about this stuff. So anyway, welcome back to the Fiesta. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite shows of all time, Batman Beyond. But before that, just so you can see, we've continued with Yatia's design. There's water on my notes. We love that. Great. We're going to be working on Yatia. We're going to finish up most of her rig and some of the other little colors and designs and shading. And then in the next episode, we'll add the last 2 or 3 pieces of her character design, and then we'll move on to a whole new character. How exciting is that? You'll also be in luck because I'm going to regularly upload videos? That doesn't even sound right. Never mind. Forget it. Anyway, this is about Batman Beyond, one of the best shows ever. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, they don't make them like they used to. They don't make them like they used to. Should I have my face in these? Would that help? Ooh, maybe the algorithm would think that I'm doing like a let's play or something. I don't know, but I'll try it. I don't care. Not now though. Next time. Okay, anyway, whatever. Batman Beyond. Let me tell you something. If you've ever seen either of the 90s animated shows, this is a sequel. So there's a whole continuity. They're all together. They look very different, but they're all together. And this story actually takes place in like 2019, which is bananas. Again, another classic tragic case of people assuming we would be way more successful than we are by this point in our lives. So we got to hurry up here. So this is the story of what happens in the future. What is the future of Gotham? You know, Batman actually doesn't live forever, contrary to popular belief. You know, he moves on. He has a life of his own, sort of. And the story doesn't take place in old Gotham City with its 1920s-esque architecture and technology. This is Neo Gotham, the Gotham of the future. And it's 2019. It's 2019. That's so crazy. Oh, I love it. Anyway, not important. The story starts with, it's a 2-part pilot, actually, just so you know. And the story starts with Bruce Wayne, Batman. He's, you know, going into some warehouse or something where this debutante, their words, not mine, has been kidnapped for like, I don't know, I think it was like 5 million ransom for money. And, you know, they got the ransom, but they were just going to kill that girl and skedaddle on out of here. So, of course, Batman shows up in a cool new age tech suit. It's all black with like a big red emblem across the chest. There's no cape, no boots. It's a onesie, all right, with a cowl. And maybe it's because there's no cape, but the cowl feels a little bit pointier than it was before. Anyway, not important. He shows up to save this little lady, fights all the bad guys, you know, does his due, all according to Cake. And wouldn't you know it, the man has a heart attack. His old ticker acts up. And while he's clutching at his chest, trying to regain his stature, somebody shows up with like a giant wrench and starts beating the life out of him. Like, I mean, the wrench is like, it's like a yardstick. It's like a sword, but instead of a point, there's a wrench at the end of it. It's a really weird long wrench. I've never seen them. Anyway, he's getting beat up and then he is able to snap out of his heart attack, I guess, and beats up the rest of them. And in order to save himself and this debutante in the last minute, he reaches and grabs the gun of one of the other kidnappers that he'd already like knocked out. He grabs his available gun and points it at the dude, and that scares the guy off. This last attacker runs out of the building just as the police show up, so he gets arrested. Bruce is just heartbroken with himself, you know? This was his, you know, that's his one rule. Well, it's not his one rule. I guess it's his second rule that we don't really talk about. But, you know, he's devastated, never used a gun if you don't count Gotham. And he's just so disappointed in himself, you know, that he couldn't protect this woman without resorting to, you know, this evil weapon. And so he goes home and he hangs up the suit and he says, "Never again." So that's the story. That's what happens to Batman, okay? That's what happens to Batman in the future. He has a bad heart, he gets old, and then he stops. But then we get the theme song, and this is a bomb theme song. It's like, no. If you hear it, you know what I'm talking about. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Anyway, a lot of information is told via news report on this show. So there's the news is on a TV that's on a train. Like, what do you call it? It's like one of those high-speed trains that's like is it a monorail? I don't know. I don't live in a country where we have innovative transportation. So whatever. Some kind of high-speed train that isn't underground. There's a TV on there, and on the news, they're talking about Wayne Powers Industries. So Bruce Wayne's company merged with some other company, and the guy who runs this company, Derek Powers, is one of those kind of vicious businessmen, like Wolf of Wall Street type of dudes. And so while the news is playing on the train, this freak shows up and climbs onto the train. And so this is what we call jokers. So one of the cool things about Batman Beyond is that it takes all of the relics of the past Gotham, and you know, the writers and the developers were thinking about how would that be different, you know, like 30, 60 years into the future? What would that be like? What would it mean? And so one of those things that they've changed is, since obviously the Joker is long gone, in his place, you get this gang in Neo Gotham, and they call themselves the Jokers with a Z. So you know that they're bad. And basically all they do is go around causing havoc and mischief and robbing and doing whatever the hell they want to do. And they're all dressed up in these different clown-esque costumes to, I guess, honor the Joker. So there's this idiot wearing like a weird little jester hat, and he's gone in there with a bunch of spray paint, and he's screwing around on the train. And for some reason, after he starts screwing around on the train, he like turns around to see everyone's reaction. He picks the one black lady on the train and starts harassing her. And who do we find on this train as well? But our main character, good old 16-year-old Terry McGinnis. And this little champ is just waiting on the speed train, still don't know, on his way to school when he sees this chicanery. And he's like, hey man, not cool. And so he gets into a fight with the Joker, obviously. It's in his nature. What you don't know about Terry is, you know, he spent a year in juvie. So you know he's like seen some stuff. He's not no punk. Okay? He's not going to take no sass from nobody. He's not really getting in trouble typically, but, you know, he has a history, as they say. So he gets in a fight with this Joker, and the Joker, like, eventually just gives up and runs away, runs off the train once it hits a stop. So that gives you your first look at, you know, who Terry is, you know, sticks up for people, sticks up for them well, actually. It's not one of those situations where you're like, hey, pick on somebody your own size, and then they get beat up. No, not this kid, okay? He ain't going down without a fight. Anyway, he gets to school. It shows him, I think he's like at practice after school. I don't know, is he a wrestler on the wrestling team? Do people just wrestle during gym class? I don't know. He's wrestling with someone in a gym at school, and you get to see Terry, his girlfriend Dana, who's just a doll, and you get to see this bully named Nelson, ? While they're wrestling, it's Nelson and Terry, and they're wrestling and they're talking trash to each other. And then Nelson, like an absolute freak, spits right in Terry's face. Like, it looked so gross. It almost looks like it, like he spat right in his mouth. The way it was weird. It was gross. Naturally, Terry like punches the absolute out of him, which was all deserved. And the coach is like, well, I only saw you punch somebody, so you gotta go, Terry. Like a real responsible, adult that monitors children during the day. So Terry gets kicked out of practice, gym, still don't know. So meanwhile, we cut away to Mr. Warren McGinnis. That's Terry's papa. And he works for Wayne Powers Industries. He's just like some lower level employee. He's not like, you know, he's not the CFO there or anything. He's just a regular employee. And while he's at work, his coworker like bursts onto the scene and is like, hey, Warren, listen, I need you to take this thing. And he gives him something. And he's like, oh, well, all right, thank you. And he's like, listen, I need you to keep this safe, Warren. Okay, I can do that. But why? Like, what is it? Listen, Warren. If anything happens to me, I want you to tell my family that I love them. And he's like, bro, what are you talking about? It's like Wednesday. And out of nowhere, Derek Powers, the head of the company, shows up and is like, hey, man, what's up? What's good? Girl, you are so late for this meeting. And so then a bunch of like security employees chase this man down and drag him away. And they're like, Warren, you're good, right? You're good with all this, right? And Warren is like, wow, I really just want to go back to work. And so Warren goes home and he's like super weirded out. And he looks at the disc that his friend / coworker gave to him. And he is super not cool with what is going on this disc. And right as he's about to like say something cool about it, Terry shows up. They start arguing because Warren says that Terry can't ever control his temper, And Terry is mad because his dad, won't stick up for him. He's told him clearly, I didn't start this fight, people spit in your face, not acceptable ever. And his dad is just like not listening to him because I'm sure he and Nelson go at it all the time and he's heard this before. And so they fight and Terry says some really mean stuff to his dad. And then he leaves to go to the club and party with Dana. How did high schoolers get into a club? What is Neo Gotham? It's a strange place. So the 16-year-old meets another 16-year-old to go into the club. And okay, maybe it wasn't a Wednesday. I don't know. It's Neo Gotham. But they're at the club. And as soon as they get there, they're waiting in line to get in. And of course, Nelson shows up in his stupid red car. And he can't even do any jerk stuff yet because as soon as he shows up, a whole bunch of Jokers show up. Not related to the first one. It's just a gang. There's like thousands of them throughout the city. And they show up and they're causing mayhem and they're driving their little motorbikes up and down Nelson's car, deserved. But then one of them grabs Dana and is like harassing her for no reason. And again, another example of Terry not really doing the wrong thing. He starts, getting into it with the Jokers because they're like literally harassing, like they snatch Dana up and like put her on one of the motorbikes and it's gross. So he actually does a pretty good job fighting off like 5 of them, but then like 10 more show up. And so then Dana's like, Terry, get out of here. And so then Terry steals one of the motorbikes and leads them on a high-speed chase all over Gotham. It's like 10 or 15 Jokers chasing this dude. So of course, as fate would have it, Terry ends up driving all through the city, on the highways, the byways, and then he's on this old cliffside road. And then of course he gets cornered at this big wide gate to an estate. And there's a creepy looking old man just standing in the middle of the road like, I know what you did last summer. And so he makes Terry swerve and crash, and then all the Jokers show up. And in case you haven't figured it out yet, this crazy old man standing in the road is Bruce Wayne. He's got a cane. He looks even older than he did the first time you saw him. Definitely not Batmaning anymore. And so the Jokers show up and they immediately say, oh, look, an old man to abuse. And they try to fight him. When I tell you that Bruce Wayne beats the buns off of all of these gang members, you just don't understand. I don't even think Terry even did a whole lot. I think Terry like hit like 2 people. Bruce beat up the rest of them. Like he beat up the other 13 people with his cane. And so Terry is instantly impressed and he's like, yo, bro, you cool. As soon as they're all gone, they turn tail and drive away. As soon as they all leave, Bruce is like having heart problems again. Typical. And so Terry helps him inside, finds his medicine and some water so the man can take his pills. And as soon as he takes his pills, he just like falls asleep. And so Terry is like, okay, well, I'm going to leave then. Thanks. Cool time. Next time it happens, you're my first call. But when he's trying to leave, there's a bat stuck in the face of a grandfather clock somewhere in the house. And so I don't know why, I wouldn't, but Terry's like, I'll let you out, Mr. Bat, like he's freaking Stanley from that Disney show. When he's fiddling with the clock, he hits a switch and it unveils the secret entrance to the Batcave. And so he goes down in there and he's like, well, what in the hell is going on here? And then he gets clubbed by the master clubber, Bruce Wayne, who has woken up and saw this foolishness and he said, get out of my house. And so Terry again is pissed because, he didn't do anything except try to help animals. This is Terry. Okay, Terry is very misunderstood. Okay, he defends women. Actually, he just defends women of color because the black lady on the train and Dana is Asian. Okay, he's just an ally. Okay, and now he's here trying to save animals and he gets nothing but disrespect and punishment. That's Neo Gotham. You're welcome. Anyway. All right, so then he goes home, whatever, and when he finally gets back home to his dad's house, there's cops everywhere, medical examiners, people are collecting evidence, canvassing the scene, and he's like, well, what is going on? And then he finds his mom there, and his parents are divorced, so mama ain't supposed to be there. And he's like, Mom, what is going on? And he finds out as soon as he left, Jokers broke into his dad's house, robbed the place, and murdered his dad. So Terry is like riddled with grief because he's like, so upset that he left, and then when he was gone, this terrible thing happened to his dad. And so after they go to the funeral and everything, he's still upset, but he's also like confused. He's very skeptical because he tells his mom, why would dad open the door if a bunch of like idiot gang members showed up? Like, these aren't masters of espionage and deception. Okay, they didn't like make up a lie to get in. They just break into places. The door was unlocked. So why would he just let them in so they could rob him? And this was happening like at the same time. Like while he was being chased by Jokers went to his house and killed his dad. And he's like, how did they even figure out like who I was and where I lived? Like, that's crazy. And his mom is like, you know what, Terry, I'm sure it wasn't related. You can't blame yourself for these things. Woo, woo, woo. So while he's moving in his thing, so now he's got to move in with his mom and his little brother. So while he's moving his stuff into their apartment, he finds a disc lodged into one of his dad's old belongings. And he's looking at the disc just on his computer and he's like, this doesn't look great at all. And so then he takes it to the one person that could definitely help him, the crazy old man who beat him with a cane. He goes back to the Bruce Wayne estate and he's like, listen, sir, your company is trash, okay? And I can tell you that right now because I got some spicy deets that I'm sure the Neo Gotham Times would love to get a hold of. He doesn't threaten him like that, but, he says, I've got info. And so he lets him into the Batcave. I guess if you're there, you haven't squealed yet, I guess that's okay. So he takes him into the Batcave, and they're looking at what's on the disc. And so apparently, Wayne Powers Industries has been secretly developing this horribly destructive nerve gas, which is bioterrorism and not cool, not legal and not cool. And they're planning to sell it and get into, I guess, arms dealing. I don't know. Get into the old biological warfare game. So Terry is pissed. His dad was murdered and they completely glossed over it. And there's also a scene where Derek Powers specifically speaks on the death of Warren. And he's got all these nice things to say. And he's saying how he's going to get revenge for Warren against, these jokers if he has it in his power. So Terry's not pleased, but Bruce Wayne is pissed. He's like, my daddy built this company from the ground up, and these people are besmirching his good name, selling biological warfare weapons. I'm not going to let it stand. So Bruce hasn't been involved in the company for years because he's old and he has heart problems. But now he's going to have to get up and put all of his socks on and his shoes and his little sock holders. And he's going to have to get back out there and handle business again, since he's got to do everything himself, just about. So Bruce tells Terry to take this information and give it to Barbara Gordon. And Terry's like, man, I ain't going to the police. And he said, I didn't tell you to take it to the police. I told you to take it to Barbara Gordon. Listen, boy. Terry's like, why aren't we just using the bat suit? And he's like, no more bat suits, no more Batman. We don't roll like that anymore. There are rules that I made up that I'm going to make everyone follow, says Bruce. And Terry alludes to this really, really dark past. He says, something made you quit this. And it's not just because you got old. Some real bad happened to you, didn't it? Didn't it, Bruce? And it did, but that's for the movie. And I'm not talking about the movie. You would have to get like 300 likes for me to talk about the movie because it's long. Anyway, Terry leaves, not satisfied with his conversation. But I guess he's just going to have to do what Bruce says. And after he leaves, he gets picked up in a limo by Derek Powers. Derek forces Terry to give up the disc that has all of this incriminating information on it. So Terry throws the disc into the air and escapes. So now we know that they're looking for Terry because Terry has the disc. They're pretty sure he's seen what's on it. And so he can't stay either. So they're going to be looking for his tail. You find out later that some dude from Kaznia is coming to Neo Gotham. That's who the nerve gas is going to. And so you may be expecting Bruce to do some inner reflections, His parents were tragically murdered because of some business-related tomfoolery going on, and he paid the price for that as like an innocent consequence of business. And Terry's going through the exact same thing. His dad was murdered because of some kind of stupid business secrets. And, they just tied up loose ends with his dad. And now he has to deal with that. And you'd think that maybe he would have a change of heart and say, well, you know what? This kid wants to do good. He wants justice just like I wanted justice. Who am I to deny him the same bat justice that I got to benefit from for all of these years? And he'll maybe give Terry the suit or give him a chance to prove himself with a bat suit or just a batarang, just one. I don't know. Well, none of that happens. Terry literally just breaks in and steals the suit without Bruce even knowing. So he just steals it. And while Terry is sneaking into Wayne Powers Industries, he hears Bruce. There's a little radio in his cowl. And so Bruce is like fussing at him about stealing stuff. And then again, we have the flip side. If Terry had done some reflection and realized that he completely stole from an old man for his own selfish reasons, he might be a little more apologetic and be like, look, Bruce, I'm trying to get justice for my papa. I I can't let this go by. It's not within me. I'm sure you can understand. I gotta do this. But he doesn't. He has like some smart ass jokes about, I'm having fun in the suit. I'm not gonna give it back. I'm not doing that. So Bruce is like, okay, that's fine. And he remotely deactivates the suit. So Terry has to sit there. He can't move. He's like paralyzed in the suit. So the henchmen show up and they're like, hey, Freebie's over here. And they start beating the life out of Terry. And Bruce watches this for a slightly longer amount of time than expected. He's just delighting in a troubled youth getting the life beat out of him. Old habits die hard, I guess. But he finally reactivates the suit so Terry can escape. And then Terry has that reflective heart-to-heart where they're like comparing each other's tragedies and bonding over that a little bit. He's like, I gotta do this, man. And they're shipping that nerve gas out tonight. So you can either stop me to prove a point or you can prevent literal massacres from happening. So he lets Terry go. Terry stops the shipment and he accidentally, is it accidentally? We don't know. But he breaks a whole canister of this nerve gas over Derek Powers. And that's no good. That's no bueno. The only way you can recover from this nerve gas is with extreme radiation. That's the only way to eradicate it. Cut to, I assume the next day, Terry is like passed out on the bed because he had a long day yesterday. And his mom is like, Terry, wake up. There's some big news. Someone important is here to see you. And so he goes into the living room and Bruce Wayne is there in the flesh in his little cardigan and everything. And he offers Terry a job as his assistant to just basically spend an undefined number of hours with Bruce Wayne doing whatever he wants. So he offers Terry this job. And I don't know if he ever gets paid. They never actually talk about him getting paid, but I hope he does. It would suck to be 16 and like not have a life, but then not even get paid. I mean, it's not like he's an adopted son like Robin and he's just got a trust waiting for him no matter how much Robining he does. But anyway, he accepts the offer, obviously, because he's such a good Batman. He obviously wants to keep doing that. And then they shake hands on the deal and like the music changes. Like it's this really cute little like guitar music, whatever. And then it changes to this dun-dum. And it's this like really dramatic, like eerie music where you can tell they were going for these deep, like, deal with the devil vibes. He's like, welcome to my world, Terry, which is just this dark, sad, being Batman life. And he's like, welcome to my world. And they shake hands on it, and it's super dramatic. It's the best. It's so cool. And you think that's the end, but it's not. So then we go way back across the road to, I assume, some dank basement in Wayne Powers Industries, where they have been trying their darndest to save Derek Powers' life after he got hit with so much concentrated nerve gas. And so they're like, well, boss, there's good news and there's bad news. Give it to me straight. I don't have time for games. And he's like, well, we were able to save your life. So the nerve gas is gone. Nerve gas is gone. Okay, that's good. And he's like, well, what's the bad news? And they're like, okay, so, and they've got this big light on him. He's on like a surgery table and they've got a big overhead light. And they're like, just kill the lights. And so they kill the lights and this man glows like a glow stick. You can see his bones through his skin and it's all just bright green. It took so much radiation to cure this man. Between the nerve gas and the radiation, it mutated his entire body. So now he is basically like a walking nuclear risk. And he came to nothing but laugh because the nerve gas went right up to his old brain cells and he ain't doing so hot no more. He's a monster. He's a monster. And I'm going to give you one spoiler here. There's an episode where Terry finally finds out what happened to Derek Powers because he's kind of absent for much of the show, obviously. And he finds out that this like irradiated freak that's been running around Neo Gotham is actually Derek Powers. And he's like, oh man, did I do that to him with that nerve gas? Good. He sucks and I hate him and he killed my dad. And I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. Same energy, pretty much. And, you know, that's what separates Terry from all of these other heroes, okay? He doesn't feel bad when people get what they deserve, okay? He's not killing people, not on purpose, but, you know, he's not going to shed a tear for some terrible person who ended up with a terrible fate, you know? Who cares? Not his problem. He didn't make you terrible your whole life. So that's the pilot. That's the whole first episode. It's a 2-part, so that's why this is a very long story here. It's basically like an hour. So anyway, this show is so good. It's one of my favorite shows ever. It passes the theme song test with flying colors. It's just short enough that it's a bop, let me tell you something. And it fits with the theme of Neo Gotham really well. The rest of the music is pretty good. The cast is great. Lauren Tom is in it. Kevin Conroy's in it. Roy, who the hell is Roy? Will Friedle is in it. It's just so much fun. And I'll tell you something. It does a really good job of separating itself from the previous animated series, like Batman the Animated Series and like Batman the New Adventures. Sure. It does a really good job of showing you so many more interesting things about Neo Gotham that don't have anything to do with old Gotham and old Batman stories. Like sometimes they'll allude back to like an old character or an old story or something, but that's kind of just a fun tidbit for you. You're really supposed to be involved and you're really supposed to enjoy all the new futuristic things that Gotham has to offer. And the only like comparison I can think of would be like The Legend of Korra, because I feel like the difference between these two is that when you're watching Legend of Korra, they show you like the new world and the futuristic things that are going on. They show you the new stuff, and that should get you interested in exploring what the future is like versus what the past was. But they also keep throwing the past at you. Like almost all of the characters in the story that are really important to the story are related to characters from the old show. Like as soon as the show starts, you meet old Katara. And then you go to Republic City and then you meet Toph's daughters. And then you meet all of Aang and Katara's family. Like they're central to the story. But then you never find out what happened to Sokka. And, you know, you keep expecting more relics from the past to become relevant to the story. And then when they don't, you have a whole lot of questions because the questions never got answered. There's like a whole like 50 or 60 years of questions that, you know, you should have. But Batman Beyond doesn't really dwell on any of that stuff. There's basically Bruce Wayne, the Jokers are like a kind of a mainstay in the show, but there's so much more technology and the characters are all different. With the exception of Bruce, all of the other characters are completely new. The villains are all new, all just Terry McGinnis's villains. Sometimes they use technology or they bring back old motifs from the old show, but the villains and the stories are all new. They're all their own thing. So yeah, that's the show. That's Batman Beyond. One of my favorites of all time. Never gonna get old. Priceless work of art. 7th wonder of the world. 8th? 7th? How many? I clearly don't know enough information about anything. Okay, that's the show. That's the episode. So I can't wait to show you guys the rest of Yatia's design in the next episode. So that'll be fun. And be well.